This is Around the Farm, and I'm your host, Clint, and we're going to be talking about all things ag. Today we have a special bonus episode for you that's very timely for the growing season. Recently, I was at the World Agri-Tech Summit in San Francisco, where I joined over 1,200 agribusiness leaders and tech entrepreneurs. While I was there, I had the chance to catch up with David Macmillan, the CEO of Deveron UAS, an aerial imagery and data collection company. Deveron is a partner of Climate FieldView, providing field imagery that is valuable for things like evaluating stand and crop scouting. Stay with us as we talk about making data even more meaningful, moonshots, and creating digitized solutions for individual farms. David, thanks for joining here.
Thanks, Clint. Always a pleasure to be with you guys.
You know, I find it really interesting being here at the World Agri-Tech Conference here. How do you see this different from other farm shows, whether it's InfoAg or a Farm Progress? How does this differ from some of those that you may attend?
Well, I think, first and foremost, it's in San Francisco, so there's very much more of a technical or technology lens to it all. So I think there's to some respect, questions around where is agriculture headed rather than necessarily what can we do for you this season on the farm. Even just sitting through some of the panels today, a lot of the questions are around like how do we scale, how do we take interpretation of data and make it meaningful and available to not just 3 proof of concept people, but the global community. And I think those are questions that usually sort of arise in the Bay Area and then sort of filter out to the rest of the world. So it's been really cool to see that. And I think another thing that we were talking about earlier is we're seeing a lot of large technology companies that have a presence. So I think typically if I'd be at an event in the U.S. Midwest, you wouldn't see the Microsofts and the IBMs of the world, and they all seem to have a presence here, obviously with this theme of digitization that's kind of happening in agriculture.
There's usually always buzzwords, that goes around with being in agri-tech in San Francisco here. I mean, what do you see those buzzwords being, this year at this conference?
I think you're hearing a lot of not just like data. I think data has moved on to, not even interpretation, but everyone wants recommendations and then recommendations to predictions. So that seems to be a big theme of, okay, we all know that farmers have lots of data. Everyone's been talking about, I think last year, return on investment was the big buzzword that folks on the farm wanted to hear about. And now I think it's kind of taking those ideas and being able to show a farmer, hey, you sit back on your couch, this data is going to be interpreted and make a recommendation for you of how to potentially, farm in a more efficient way or increase your yield. So that's been sort of like from 30,000 feet, the few buzzwords I've been hearing, definitely.
From a farmer perspective, seeing about some of these folks that are here and some of these, new technologies that are coming out, how long does it take, typically for maybe a new technology to be talked about here at the show versus where it's actually applicable in the field?
It's a good question. Seeing as we started Deveron in 2014 as a first and foremost drone data service provider, I probably thought our initial hypothesis was that we'd cover the world in 3 years. I think as you find, once you actually go out and start having to talk to customers, which is the hard part that I think a lot of tech companies, there's the grand vision first before they think about, okay, well, how am I going to go into the middle of North Dakota and help someone implement this on the farm? There's quite a bit of lag time, and ag's slow because, we have to wait 365 days to test our hypothesis. So I think there's this, at least from my perspective, you got to stand back a little bit and say, okay, these visions that we're hearing here are going to take some time to actually become real and a reality. Although it was interesting, the head of Google X was speaking this morning, and he was talking about moonshots, and he was saying, even 30 years ago, the fertilizer business, if you had said to people that it was going to change, everyone said, oh, what are you talking about? It'll never happen. And some of this technology has been around for 20, 30 years, and it takes that amount of time to get there. I mean, I think Roundup was probably one of those unique products that kind of got scale, and that took 7 years, right, for kind of full penetration. So it's just, farming is slow, but it's slow for a reason, because we have to work with the growers and understand that return on investment.
Talking about return on investment and profitability, my last question to you here will be, what's Deveron doing to help those farmers that you're working with, really focus on that profitability aspect and really, make a better return on investment?
So we've been really, I think, focused over the last 18 months of not just taking one layer of information that we're really good at collecting. So the data acquisition piece needs to be married with the people that are working on these agronomic recommendations. So whether it's with, our friends at FieldView that sort of take all these multiple layers and mush them together into a recommendation around what hybrid to potentially use, or through all this data interpretation, what may perform best in their given environment. So we're kind of focusing more on that systems integration approach where, every enterprise level account or farmer has a different question on their farm, and really working with them to understand, is it a yield maximization issue or a cost minimization issue for you and your operations? Everyone's different. Everyone uses a different blend of fertilizer. Everyone uses a different hybrid. But I think, what we've really done is we acquired a data acquisition company that's focused really on agronomic interpretation on a field-by-field basis. So what we do is we take remote sensing data, we take soil data, and we sort of look at all the aggregate information we have, and then we look at that individual's farm, and we say, okay, based on your planting rates, based on your historical yield, here's maybe some opportunities that you can change a decision that you make in season. And some of it's as simple as don't plant until May 8th. Like, do not plant early. Whatever you do not plant early, and sending them emails saying, we know you're starting the planter. But it's really, I think it's just working with growers to understand each individual opportunity to help them digitize their farm. And then once they've started to digitize and get good data, looking at it on a case-by-case basis to provide them with, variable seeds recommendation, variable fungicide, variable fertilizer. And that's just going to be dependent on what these individuals are doing.
Well, that sounds great, David, and I appreciate you stopping by and talking with us here today.
Yeah, thanks, Clint. Always a pleasure to see you guys.
I'd like to thank David for taking the time to talk today and for this bonus episode of Around the Farm. Remember, Around the Farm is brought to you by Climate FieldView. Be sure to check out our recent planting season episodes, and we'll be back soon with new episodes all about the growing season. Don't miss any episodes. Subscribe to Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcast. And thanks for listening, and I'll see you around the farm.